I have a car. I have a car that breaks down all the time. I have a car that breaks down all the time in the middle of nowhere. She has a friend. She has a friend who always shows up late. She has a friend who always shows up late to every single event. I need a job. I need a job that pays well. I need a job that pays well and doesn't kill my soul. He has a dog. He has a dog that barks at everyone. He has a dog that barks at everyone who walks past the house. I know a place. I know a place that serves amazing food. I know a place that serves amazing food at a really reasonable price. She made a decision. She made a decision that changed everything. She made a decision that changed everything for the better. I found a wallet. I found a wallet that was sitting on the bench. I found a wallet that was sitting on the bench right outside the station. He told me something. He told me something that I couldn't believe. He told me something that I couldn't believe when I first heard it. I met a guy. I met a guy who knows absolutely everyone. I met a guy who knows absolutely everyone in this whole industry. She bought a bag. She bought a bag that costs more than my rent. She bought a bag that costs more than my rent and doesn't even have a zipper. I live in an apartment. I live in an apartment that faces the ocean. I live in an apartment that faces the ocean on the top floor of the building. He works at a company. He works at a company that never lets anyone leave on time. He works at a company that never lets anyone leave on time no matter what day it is. I'm reading a book. I'm reading a book that everyone keeps talking about. I'm reading a book that everyone keeps talking about but nobody actually finishes. She has a son. She has a son who just started high school. She has a son who just started high school and already has a girlfriend. I watched a movie. I watched a movie that made me cry the whole way through. I watched a movie that made me cry the whole way through from beginning to end. I have a neighbor. I have a neighbor who plays guitar at midnight. I have a neighbor who plays guitar at midnight every single night without fail. She sent me a message. She sent me a message that I still haven't replied to. She sent me a message that I still haven't replied to even though it's been 3 weeks. I know a woman. I know a woman who speaks 5 languages fluently. I know a woman who speaks 5 languages fluently and is learning a 6th one now. He drives a truck. He drives a truck that takes up 2 parking spaces. He drives a truck that takes up 2 parking spaces everywhere he goes. I have a problem. I have a problem that I just can't seem to fix. I have a problem that I just can't seem to fix no matter what I try. She works at a cafe. She works at a cafe that opens at 5 in the morning. She works at a cafe that opens at 5 in the morning every day, including weekends. I grew up in a town. I grew up in a town that nobody has ever heard of. I grew up in a town that nobody has ever heard of even though it's only an hour from the city. He has a brother. He has a brother who looks nothing like him. He has a brother who looks nothing like him even though they're twins. I work with a guy. I work with a guy who takes credit for everything. I work with a guy who takes credit for everything and never admits when he's wrong. I have a boss. I have a boss who micromanages every little thing. I have a boss who micromanages every little thing and sends emails at 2 in the morning. She found an apartment. She found an apartment that's walking distance from work. She found an apartment that's walking distance from work and somehow still within her budget. I went to a school. I went to a school that had no air conditioning. I went to a school that had no air conditioning in the middle of a Florida summer. He owns a restaurant. He owns a restaurant that's always fully booked. He owns a restaurant that's always fully booked months in advance no matter the season. I have a sister. I have a sister who calls me every single day. I have a sister who calls me every single day even when I don't pick up. I have a habit. I have a habit that drives everyone around me crazy. I have a habit that drives everyone around me crazy, but I just can't seem to break. I saw a house. I saw a house that I immediately fell in love with. I saw a house that I immediately fell in love with the moment I walked through the door. She has a cat. She has a cat that hates absolutely everyone. She has a cat that hates absolutely everyone except her, and even that's debatable. I have a friend. I have a friend who never answers his phone. I have a friend who never answers his phone but somehow always knows what's going on. He made a mistake. He made a mistake that cost him everything. He made a mistake that cost him everything he had worked for over the past 10 years. I use an app. I use an app that tracks everything I eat. I use an app that tracks everything I eat and makes me feel guilty about all of it. She has a husband. She has a husband who can't cook anything at all. She has a husband who can't cook anything at all but insists on being in charge of dinner. I have a coworker. I have a coworker who talks non-stop all day. I have a coworker who talks non-stop all day and somehow still gets all her work done. He found a shortcut. He found a shortcut that saves him an hour every day. He found a shortcut that saves him an hour every day on his commute to the office. I know a doctor. I know a doctor who works 100 hours a week. I know a doctor who works 100 hours a week and still finds time to run marathons. I have a dog. I have a dog that eats everything in sight. I have a dog that eats everything in sight, including things that are not food. She took a class. She took a class that completely changed how she thinks. She took a class that completely changed how she thinks about money and investing. I have a car. I have a car that's older than some of my coworkers. I have a car that's older than some of my coworkers but still runs perfectly fine. He lives in a city. He lives in a city that never really sleeps. He lives in a city that never really sleeps no matter what time of night it is. I met someone. I met someone who made me rethink everything. I met someone who made me rethink everything I thought I knew about relationships. She has a daughter. She has a daughter who is smarter than all of us combined. She has a daughter who is smarter than all of us combined, and she's only 8 years old. I have a routine. I have a routine that keeps me sane. I have a routine that keeps me sane when everything else in my life feels out of control. He told a joke. He told a joke that nobody laughed at. He told a joke that nobody laughed at except himself, and he laughed way too hard. I found a cafe. I found a cafe that has the best coffee I've ever had. I found a cafe that has the best coffee I've ever had hidden in a tiny alley downtown. She has a memory. She has a memory that she can never seem to shake. She has a memory that she can never seem to shake no matter how hard she tries. I work in a building. I work in a building that has no windows. I work in a building that has no windows and makes you forget what time of day it is. I have a rule. I have a rule that I never break. I have a rule that I never break no matter how tempting it gets. She has a job. She has a job that sounds boring but actually pays incredibly well. She has a job that sounds boring but actually pays incredibly well and comes with amazing benefits. He sent an email. He sent an email that got him fired on the spot. He sent an email that got him fired on the spot before he even made it home that day. I know a kid. I know a kid who taught himself to code at age 9. I know a kid who taught himself to code at age 9 and already has his own YouTube channel. She made a promise. She made a promise that she couldn't keep. She made a promise that she couldn't keep no matter how hard she tried. I have a weakness. I have a weakness that I'm not proud of. I have a weakness that I'm not proud of but honestly can't seem to do anything about. He has a wife. He has a wife who is way out of his league. He has a wife who is way out of his league and everyone knows it, including him. I found a trail. I found a trail that goes all the way up to the ridge. I found a trail that goes all the way up to the ridge with the most unbelievable view at the top. She has a therapist. She has a therapist who changed her entire outlook on life. She has a therapist who changed her entire outlook on life in just a few sessions. I have an uncle. I have an uncle who has a story for every single situation. I have an uncle who has a story for every single situation, whether you asked for one or not. He owns a cabin. He owns a cabin that's completely off the grid. He owns a cabin that's completely off the grid with no Wi-Fi and no cell service whatsoever. I use a method. I use a method that actually works for me. I use a method that actually works for me even though everyone told me it wouldn't. She has a laugh. She has a laugh that fills up the entire room. She has a laugh that fills up the entire room and makes everyone around her start laughing too. I went to a concert. I went to a concert that lasted nearly 5 hours. I went to a concert that lasted nearly 5 hours and still felt like it ended too soon. He has a talent. He has a talent that he never really talks about. He has a talent that he never really talks about even though it's genuinely incredible. I have a fear. I have a fear that I've never told anyone about. I have a fear that I've never told anyone about because I know how ridiculous it sounds. She runs a blog. She runs a blog that gets millions of visitors every month. She runs a blog that gets millions of visitors every month, all from a tiny apartment in Seoul. I bought a jacket. I bought a jacket that goes with absolutely everything. I bought a jacket that goes with absolutely everything and was worth every single penny. He has a condition. He has a condition that makes it hard to sleep. He has a condition that makes it hard to sleep and has been affecting his life for years. I know a chef. I know a chef who can make anything taste incredible. I know a chef who can make anything taste incredible even with almost nothing in the fridge. She found a letter. She found a letter that her grandmother had written decades ago. She found a letter that her grandmother had written decades ago and never got around to sending. I have a goal. I have a goal that I've been working toward for years. I have a goal that I've been working toward for years and I'm finally starting to see progress. He joined a group. He joined a group that meets every Thursday evening. He joined a group that meets every Thursday evening and has completely changed his social life. I visited a village. I visited a village that time seemed to have forgotten. I visited a village that time seemed to have forgotten somewhere deep in the mountains of Portugal. She has a voice. She has a voice that stops people in their tracks. She has a voice that stops people in their tracks the moment she opens her mouth to sing. I have a theory. I have a theory that nobody takes seriously. I have a theory that nobody takes seriously, but I'm more convinced of it every single day. He drives a car. He drives a car that turns heads everywhere he goes. He drives a car that turns heads everywhere he goes, even in cities full of fancy vehicles. I saw a documentary. I saw a documentary that kept me up all night thinking. I saw a documentary that kept me up all night thinking about things I had never considered before. She has a grandfather. She has a grandfather who still goes to the gym every morning. She has a grandfather who still goes to the gym every morning at the age of 82. I have a playlist. I have a playlist that I listen to whenever I need to focus. I have a playlist that I listen to whenever I need to focus, and it works like a charm every time. I went to a wedding. I went to a wedding that turned into a complete disaster. I went to a wedding that turned into a complete disaster by the time the reception even started. He has a mentor. He has a mentor who pushed him harder than anyone else ever had. He has a mentor who pushed him harder than anyone else ever had and never let him settle for less. She bought a house. She bought a house that everyone told her to walk away from. She bought a house that everyone told her to walk away from but turned out to be a total gem. I have a tradition. I have a tradition that my family has kept up for generations. I have a tradition that my family has kept up for generations and nobody really questions anymore. He found a note. He found a note that was tucked inside an old library book. He found a note that was tucked inside an old library book and clearly meant for someone else entirely. I know a couple. I know a couple who met on the very last day of a trip abroad. I know a couple who met on the very last day of a trip abroad and have been together ever since. She has a professor. She has a professor who assigns more reading than anyone can possibly finish. She has a professor who assigns more reading than anyone can possibly finish and still expects discussion. I use a planner. I use a planner that has completely transformed how I manage my time. I use a planner that has completely transformed how I manage my time since I started using it last year. He has a scar. He has a scar that comes with a really wild story. He has a scar that comes with a really wild story he loves to tell at dinner parties. I have a dream. I have a dream that I've been chasing for as long as I can remember. I have a dream that I've been chasing for as long as I can remember and I'm not ready to give up on it. I know a family. I know a family that has lived in the same house for over 100 years. I know a family that has lived in the same house for over 100 years and still has no plans to leave. She has an idea. She has an idea that could actually change the whole industry. She has an idea that could actually change the whole industry if anyone would just give her a chance to prove it. He got a promotion. He got a promotion that nobody saw coming. He got a promotion that nobody saw coming, especially the people who had been there twice as long. I found a podcast. I found a podcast that I can't stop recommending to everyone. I found a podcast that I can't stop recommending to everyone I talk to, no matter the topic. She has a coworker. She has a coworker who somehow always smells like coffee and stress. She has a coworker who somehow always smells like coffee and stress but is the most productive person in the office. I have a cousin. I have a cousin who has lived in 7 different countries. I have a cousin who has lived in 7 different countries and still can't decide where to settle down. He told a story. He told a story that had everyone completely silent. He told a story that had everyone completely silent for a full minute after he finished. I saw a performance. I saw a performance that gave me chills from start to finish. I saw a performance that gave me chills from start to finish and I still think about it to this day. She has a way. She has a way of making everyone feel instantly at ease. She has a way of making everyone feel instantly at ease the second she walks into any room. I have a memory. I have a memory that makes me smile every time it comes up. I have a memory that makes me smile every time it comes up, no matter what kind of mood I'm in. He found a job. He found a job that he actually looks forward to every morning. He found a job that he actually looks forward to every morning, which is something he never thought possible. I have a landlord. I have a landlord who never fixes anything. I have a landlord who never fixes anything but always manages to raise the rent on time. She took a trip. She took a trip that turned her whole life around. She took a trip that turned her whole life around in ways she never could have predicted. I know a man. I know a man who hasn't watched TV in over 20 years. I know a man who hasn't watched TV in over 20 years and claims he has never been happier. He has a collection. He has a collection that took him 30 years to build. He has a collection that took him 30 years to build and is worth more than his house. I have a teacher. I have a teacher who actually makes you want to come to class. I have a teacher who actually makes you want to come to class even on a Friday morning. She found a solution. She found a solution that nobody else had even thought of. She found a solution that nobody else had even thought of despite months of trying. I visited a museum. I visited a museum that had exhibits unlike anything I had ever seen. I visited a museum that had exhibits unlike anything I had ever seen tucked away in a small town in Italy. He has a routine. He has a routine that he has stuck to for 15 years straight. He has a routine that he has stuck to for 15 years straight without skipping a single day. I have a neighbor. I have a neighbor who grows her own vegetables in the backyard. I have a neighbor who grows her own vegetables in the backyard and leaves bags of them at everyone's door. She made a comment. She made a comment that completely derailed the whole meeting. She made a comment that completely derailed the whole meeting and nobody knew how to recover from it. I know a person. I know a person who has never once been late to anything. I know a person who has never once been late to anything in his entire adult life. He owns a bookstore. He owns a bookstore that smells exactly like a bookstore should. He owns a bookstore that smells exactly like a bookstore should and has a cat that greets you at the door. I have a commute. I have a commute that takes nearly 2 hours each way. I have a commute that takes nearly 2 hours each way, but I've learned to use the time wisely. She has a mother. She has a mother who worries about absolutely everything. She has a mother who worries about absolutely everything and calls twice a day just to make sure. I tried a restaurant. I tried a restaurant that everyone in the neighborhood had been raving about. I tried a restaurant that everyone in the neighborhood had been raving about and it completely lived up to the hype. He made a discovery. He made a discovery that changed the way scientists look at the problem. He made a discovery that changed the way scientists look at the problem entirely and opened up a whole new field. I have a phone. I have a phone that is held together by a case and a prayer. I have a phone that is held together by a case and a prayer but somehow still works perfectly fine. She joined a club. She joined a club that meets every Saturday morning. She joined a club that meets every Saturday morning and has become the highlight of her whole week. I know a pilot. I know a pilot who has flown to over 60 countries. I know a pilot who has flown to over 60 countries and still gets excited every single time he boards a plane. He has a daughter. He has a daughter who is going to change the world someday. He has a daughter who is going to change the world someday and everyone who meets her already knows it. I found a store. I found a store that sells things you didn't know you needed. I found a store that sells things you didn't know you needed until you walk in and suddenly need everything. She wrote a letter. She wrote a letter that she never ended up sending. She wrote a letter that she never ended up sending but says writing it was the most therapeutic thing she ever did. I have a dream. I have a dream that keeps coming back every few months. I have a dream that keeps coming back every few months and always leaves me feeling unsettled for days. He has a grandfather. He has a grandfather who fought in a war and never once talked about it. He has a grandfather who fought in a war and never once talked about it no matter how many times anyone asked. I use an alarm. I use an alarm that I always end up ignoring. I use an alarm that I always end up ignoring even though I set it with the best of intentions every night. She found a recipe. She found a recipe that her whole family now requests every holiday. She found a recipe that her whole family now requests every holiday without fail ever since she made it that first time. I have a friend. I have a friend who has read over 500 books. I have a friend who has read over 500 books and can somehow recall every single one of them in detail. He took a risk. He took a risk that most people in his position would never have considered. He took a risk that most people in his position would never have considered and it ended up paying off massively. I know a nurse. I know a nurse who works back-to-back shifts without ever complaining. I know a nurse who works back-to-back shifts without ever complaining and still has energy left over for her kids. She has a blog. She has a blog that started as a joke and became her full-time career. She has a blog that started as a joke and became her full-time career within less than 2 years. I live in a neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood that everyone is slowly moving out of. I live in a neighborhood that everyone is slowly moving out of, but I still think it has a lot of charm left. He has an ex. He has an ex who somehow keeps showing up in his life. He has an ex who somehow keeps showing up in his life at the most inconvenient possible moments. I have a gym. I have a gym that is always packed no matter what time I go. I have a gym that is always packed no matter what time I go, so I've started going at 5 in the morning. She took a chance. She took a chance that completely transformed her career. She took a chance that completely transformed her career, and she says it was the scariest and best thing she ever did. I know a writer. I know a writer who has been working on the same novel for 12 years. I know a writer who has been working on the same novel for 12 years and swears it's almost done. He found an apartment. He found an apartment that is somehow even smaller than his last one. He found an apartment that is somehow even smaller than his last one, but is right in the middle of everything he loves. I have a resolution. I have a resolution that I've made and broken for 3 years in a row. I have a resolution that I've made and broken for 3 years in a row, but this time I genuinely think it'll stick. She has a way. She has a way of turning any situation into something positive. She has a way of turning any situation into something positive even when everyone else has completely given up. I know a couple. I know a couple who argue constantly but are absolutely perfect for each other. I know a couple who argue constantly but are absolutely perfect for each other in every way that actually matters. He has a suitcase. He has a suitcase that is always half-packed and ready to go. He has a suitcase that is always half-packed and ready to go because he never knows when an opportunity will come up. I found a shortcut. I found a shortcut that cuts my morning commute in half. I found a shortcut that cuts my morning commute in half, and I have no idea why more people don't know about it. She made a speech. She made a speech that had half the room in tears. She made a speech that had half the room in tears by the time she got to the second paragraph. I have a tradition. I have a tradition that I started by accident and now can't stop. I have a tradition that I started by accident and now can't stop, even though it made no sense to begin with. He has a skill. He has a skill that he picked up completely on his own. He has a skill that he picked up completely on his own with nothing but YouTube videos and sheer stubbornness. I know a teacher. I know a teacher who genuinely remembers every student she has ever taught. I know a teacher who genuinely remembers every student she has ever taught, even decades after they graduated. She has a lease. She has a lease that ends right before winter hits. She has a lease that ends right before winter hits, which is possibly the worst timing imaginable. I have a bag. I have a bag that I've been carrying around for 10 years. I have a bag that I've been carrying around for 10 years and shows absolutely no signs of giving up. He told me a secret. He told me a secret that I've been carrying around ever since. He told me a secret that I've been carrying around ever since and genuinely wish I didn't know. I found a book. I found a book that answered questions I didn't even know I had. I found a book that answered questions I didn't even know I had and completely shifted the way I see things. She has a boss. She has a boss who somehow makes every meeting feel like a waste of time. She has a boss who somehow makes every meeting feel like a waste of time and yet schedules more of them every week. I have a jacket. I have a jacket that I wear regardless of the weather. I have a jacket that I wear regardless of the weather because it goes with absolutely everything I own. He found a mentor. He found a mentor who saw potential in him before anyone else did. He found a mentor who saw potential in him before anyone else did and pushed him to take himself seriously. I know a barista. I know a barista who remembers every regular customer's order by heart. I know a barista who remembers every regular customer's order by heart without ever writing anything down. She has a habit. She has a habit of saying yes to things she doesn't actually want to do. She has a habit of saying yes to things she doesn't actually want to do and then quietly dreading them for weeks. I visited a city. I visited a city that I had been dreaming about for years. I visited a city that I had been dreaming about for years and somehow still managed to exceed every expectation. He has a theory. He has a theory about why everything in his life keeps going sideways. He has a theory about why everything in his life keeps going sideways, but nobody around him finds it very convincing. I have a chair. I have a chair that I refuse to throw away. I have a chair that I refuse to throw away even though everyone who visits tells me I absolutely should. She found a therapist. She found a therapist who finally helped her make sense of things. She found a therapist who finally helped her make sense of things she had been carrying around for most of her life. I know a guy. I know a guy who has never once paid full price for anything. I know a guy who has never once paid full price for anything and somehow always finds a deal nobody else can. He made a call. He made a call that saved the entire project at the last minute. He made a call that saved the entire project at the last minute and nobody ever fully acknowledged how close it got. I have a ritual. I have a ritual that I do every single morning without exception. I have a ritual that I do every single morning without exception and genuinely cannot function without. She took a job. She took a job that she was completely underqualified for on paper. She took a job that she was completely underqualified for on paper but absolutely crushed within the first 3 months. I found a gym. I found a gym that is never crowded no matter what time you go. I found a gym that is never crowded no matter what time you go and is somehow cheaper than everywhere else. He has a past. He has a past that he doesn't really like to talk about. He has a past that he doesn't really like to talk about but occasionally lets slip when he's had a drink or two. I know a woman. I know a woman who raised 4 kids entirely on her own. I know a woman who raised 4 kids entirely on her own and still managed to build a career from scratch. She has a garden. She has a garden that she started during the pandemic and never stopped tending. She has a garden that she started during the pandemic and never stopped tending even when everything else went back to normal. I have a laptop. I have a laptop that overheats if I so much as open 2 tabs. I have a laptop that overheats if I so much as open 2 tabs, but I just cannot bring myself to replace it. He joined a team. He joined a team that had been losing for years. He joined a team that had been losing for years and somehow turned everything around within a single season. I know a family. I know a family that eats dinner together every single night no matter what. I know a family that eats dinner together every single night no matter what and says it's the reason they're all so close. She has a professor. She has a professor who gives more extra credit than actual assignments. She has a professor who gives more extra credit than actual assignments and still somehow fails half the class every semester. I took a class. I took a class that I signed up for on a complete whim. I took a class that I signed up for on a complete whim and ended up being the best decision I made all year. He has a neighbor. He has a neighbor who knows everything about everyone on the street. He has a neighbor who knows everything about everyone on the street and is somehow never wrong about any of it. I have a playlist. I have a playlist that instantly puts me in a better mood. I have a playlist that instantly puts me in a better mood no matter how bad the day has been up to that point. She made a bet. She made a bet that she was absolutely certain she would win. She made a bet that she was absolutely certain she would win and lost in the most embarrassing way possible. I know a man. I know a man who built his own house entirely by himself. I know a man who built his own house entirely by himself over the course of 4 years with no outside help. He has a laugh. He has a laugh that you can hear from 3 rooms away. He has a laugh that you can hear from 3 rooms away and somehow makes whatever the joke was funnier. I found a path. I found a path that runs along the river for miles. I found a path that runs along the river for miles and is somehow always quiet no matter the time of day. She has a rule. She has a rule about never mixing business with friendship. She has a rule about never mixing business with friendship that she has broken exactly twice and regretted both times. I have a coworker. I have a coworker who brings homemade food to the office every Friday. I have a coworker who brings homemade food to the office every Friday, and it is honestly the highlight of the whole week. He took a course. He took a course that completely rewired how he thinks about money. He took a course that completely rewired how he thinks about money and set him on a totally different path in life. I know a kid. I know a kid who remembers every fact he has ever come across. I know a kid who remembers every fact he has ever come across and brings them up at the most random moments. She has a commute. She has a commute that she has somehow turned into her favorite part of the day. She has a commute that she has somehow turned into her favorite part of the day by using it entirely for audiobooks. I visited a farm. I visited a farm that supplies half the restaurants in the city. I visited a farm that supplies half the restaurants in the city and is run by a single family of 4. He made a promise. He made a promise that took him 10 years to finally keep. He made a promise that took him 10 years to finally keep, but he got there in the end, and that's what mattered. I have a routine. I have a routine that falls apart the moment anything unexpected happens. I have a routine that falls apart the moment anything unexpected happens, which unfortunately is pretty much every week. She has a friend. She has a friend who always knows exactly what to say. She has a friend who always knows exactly what to say, even in situations where most people would have no idea. I know a chef. I know a chef who trained in 3 different countries before opening his own place. I know a chef who trained in 3 different countries before opening his own place in a tiny street nobody had heard of. He has a dream. He has a dream that his whole family thinks is completely unrealistic. He has a dream that his whole family thinks is completely unrealistic, but he is pursuing it anyway with everything he has. I found a hotel. I found a hotel that was so good I didn't want to leave. I found a hotel that was so good I didn't want to leave and ended up extending my stay by 3 extra nights. She made a move. She made a move that everyone thought was career suicide. She made a move that everyone thought was career suicide but turned out to be the smartest thing she ever did professionally. I have a memory. I have a memory from childhood that still makes me laugh out loud. I have a memory from childhood that still makes me laugh out loud every single time it comes to mind, no matter where I am. He has a condition. He has a condition that most people have never even heard of. He has a condition that most people have never even heard of but has shaped pretty much every part of how he lives. I know a couple. I know a couple who have been married for over 50 years. I know a couple who have been married for over 50 years and still hold hands whenever they go for a walk. She has a talent. She has a talent that she completely stumbled into by accident. She has a talent that she completely stumbled into by accident and has since turned into a full-time business. I have an uncle. I have an uncle who gives the same advice no matter what the problem is. I have an uncle who gives the same advice no matter what the problem is, and somehow it always ends up being relevant. He found a cabin. He found a cabin that he rents every year without fail. He found a cabin that he rents every year without fail and says it's the only place he ever truly switches off. I know a runner. I know a runner who has completed over 40 marathons. I know a runner who has completed over 40 marathons and says the first mile never gets any easier. She has a story. She has a story that she tells at every single gathering. She has a story that she tells at every single gathering, and somehow it gets a little more dramatic every time. I have a goal. I have a goal that scares me a little every time I think about it. I have a goal that scares me a little every time I think about it, but that's exactly how I know it's worth chasing. He has a scar. He has a scar that runs all the way down his left arm. He has a scar that runs all the way down his left arm and comes with a story he tells differently every time. I know a woman. I know a woman who started her own business at the age of 60. I know a woman who started her own business at the age of 60 and has never once looked back. She has a playlist. She has a playlist that she listens to every time she needs to get serious work done. She has a playlist that she listens to every time she needs to get serious work done and swears it doubles her productivity. I have a dictionary. I have a dictionary that I've had since middle school. I have a dictionary that I've had since middle school and still pull off the shelf more often than you'd think. He made a choice. He made a choice that surprised absolutely everyone who knew him. He made a choice that surprised absolutely everyone who knew him and turned out to be the making of him in the end. I know a librarian. I know a librarian who has read every single book in her branch. I know a librarian who has read every single book in her branch and can recommend the perfect one for any mood. She has a brother. She has a brother who lives on the completely opposite side of the world. She has a brother who lives on the completely opposite side of the world but somehow feels closer than people she sees every day. I found a trail. I found a trail that nobody else seems to know about. I found a trail that nobody else seems to know about even though it's only 20 minutes from the city center. He has a habit. He has a habit of leaving every project 90% finished. He has a habit of leaving every project 90% finished and then moving on to the next thing before anyone notices. I have a professor. I have a professor who assigns readings from books he wrote himself. I have a professor who assigns readings from books he wrote himself and gets visibly offended if you haven't done them. She made a video. She made a video that went viral completely overnight. She made a video that went viral completely overnight and changed her entire life within the space of a week. I know a mechanic. I know a mechanic who can diagnose a car problem just by listening to it. I know a mechanic who can diagnose a car problem just by listening to it and has never once been wrong in my experience. He has a wife. He has a wife who is somehow more organized than he will ever be. He has a wife who is somehow more organized than he will ever be and holds the entire household together without breaking a sweat. I visited a temple. I visited a temple that had been standing for over 1,000 years. I visited a temple that had been standing for over 1,000 years and made everything else feel suddenly very small. She has a way. She has a way of asking questions that make you think for days. She has a way of asking questions that make you think for days after the conversation is long over. I have a jar. I have a jar that I throw spare change into every night. I have a jar that I throw spare change into every night and cash in every year to fund a small trip somewhere. He took a gap year. He took a gap year that turned into 3 years without him really noticing. He took a gap year that turned into 3 years without him really noticing, and he says it was the best thing he ever did. I know a photographer. I know a photographer who shoots only on film despite everything. I know a photographer who shoots only on film despite everything and produces work that nobody with a digital camera can seem to replicate. She has a fear. She has a fear that she has been managing her whole life. She has a fear that she has been managing her whole life and has gotten so good at hiding that most people have no idea. I have a window. I have a window that looks out onto the most unremarkable view imaginable. I have a window that looks out onto the most unremarkable view imaginable, but somehow I never get tired of it. He found a recording. He found a recording of his father's voice from 30 years ago. He found a recording of his father's voice from 30 years ago buried in a box he hadn't opened since he moved. I know a teacher. I know a teacher who stayed late every single day for her students. I know a teacher who stayed late every single day for her students and never once made them feel like they were a burden. She has a cousin. She has a cousin who always manages to show up right when things get interesting. She has a cousin who always manages to show up right when things get interesting and somehow always has an opinion ready. I have a sweater. I have a sweater that I put on the moment the temperature drops even slightly. I have a sweater that I put on the moment the temperature drops even slightly and refuse to take off until spring. He has a collection. He has a collection of vinyl records that takes up half his living room. He has a collection of vinyl records that takes up half his living room and that he guards more carefully than anything else he owns. I found a letter. I found a letter that my grandfather had written to my grandmother before they were married. I found a letter that my grandfather had written to my grandmother before they were married, and it completely floored me. She took a semester. She took a semester abroad that changed who she was as a person. She took a semester abroad that changed who she was as a person in ways she is still discovering years later. I have a system. I have a system that works perfectly as long as nothing goes wrong. I have a system that works perfectly as long as nothing goes wrong, which unfortunately is not a condition the world tends to meet. He knows a shortcut. He knows a shortcut through the back streets that saves at least 15 minutes. He knows a shortcut through the back streets that saves at least 15 minutes and that he treats like classified information. I met a stranger. I met a stranger on a train who told me something I've never forgotten. I met a stranger on a train who told me something I've never forgotten, even though I never caught his name. She has a dog. She has a dog who acts more like a person than most people she knows. She has a dog who acts more like a person than most people she knows and has stronger opinions about the sofa. I have a routine. I have a routine that I built from scratch after everything fell apart. I have a routine that I built from scratch after everything fell apart and that I now guard like it's the most valuable thing I own. He has a friend. He has a friend who has been there through every single low point. He has a friend who has been there through every single low point without ever needing to be asked twice. I know a pilot. I know a pilot who is terrified of heights when she's not in a cockpit. I know a pilot who is terrified of heights when she's not in a cockpit, which she finds just as funny as everyone else does. She made a discovery. She made a discovery that her whole research team had been looking for. She made a discovery that her whole research team had been looking for, and that came to her completely by accident on a Tuesday afternoon. I have a plan. I have a plan that sounds completely insane on paper. I have a plan that sounds completely insane on paper but makes perfect sense once you actually hear me out. He took a walk. He took a walk that ended up lasting 4 hours. He took a walk that ended up lasting 4 hours and somehow solved a problem he had been stuck on for weeks. I know a couple. I know a couple who decided to sell everything and travel the world. I know a couple who decided to sell everything and travel the world and are now 2 years in with no signs of stopping. She has a technique. She has a technique for calming down that she learned in her 20s. She has a technique for calming down that she learned in her 20s and has passed on to just about everyone close to her. I found a seat. I found a seat at the very front of the train that nobody had claimed. I found a seat at the very front of the train that nobody had claimed, and it made the whole commute feel like a different experience. He has a reputation. He has a reputation that follows him into every room he walks into. He has a reputation that follows him into every room he walks into and that he has completely stopped trying to argue with. I have a dog. I have a dog who knows when something is wrong before I do. I have a dog who knows when something is wrong before I do and plants himself next to me until whatever it is passes. She has a grandmother. She has a grandmother who still sends handwritten letters in the mail. She has a grandmother who still sends handwritten letters in the mail and whose handwriting is somehow more beautiful at 80 than most people's ever is. I know a man. I know a man who gave up a 6-figure salary to become a farmer. I know a man who gave up a 6-figure salary to become a farmer and says he has never slept better in his life. He found a watch. He found a watch at a flea market that turned out to be worth a small fortune. He found a watch at a flea market that turned out to be worth a small fortune and still hasn't fully processed what happened. I have a friend. I have a friend who genuinely does not understand the concept of being bored. I have a friend who genuinely does not understand the concept of being bored and fills every spare moment with something new. She took a risk. She took a risk on a person that everyone told her not to trust. She took a risk on a person that everyone told her not to trust and is still deciding whether she made the right call. I know a runner. I know a runner who trains every day even when he's sick. I know a runner who trains every day even when he's sick and somehow manages to convince himself it's actually helping. He has a project. He has a project that he has been putting off for the better part of a year. He has a project that he has been putting off for the better part of a year and brings up every time someone asks what he's been up to. I visited a market. I visited a market that only opens on the first Sunday of every month. I visited a market that only opens on the first Sunday of every month and is completely worth planning your whole weekend around. She has a voice. She has a voice that makes you stop whatever you're doing. She has a voice that makes you stop whatever you're doing the moment she starts to sing. I have a neighbor. I have a neighbor who leaves food outside his door for stray cats. I have a neighbor who leaves food outside his door for stray cats every single morning without missing a day. He made a decision. He made a decision that his family still hasn't fully forgiven him for. He made a decision that his family still hasn't fully forgiven him for even though it was nearly a decade ago. I know a woman. I know a woman who has never owned a smartphone in her life. I know a woman who has never owned a smartphone in her life and seems genuinely happier than anyone else I know. She has a son. She has a son who asks more questions than any teacher can keep up with. She has a son who asks more questions than any teacher can keep up with and has absolutely no plans to slow down. I found a bench. I found a bench in the park that has the most perfect view of the whole city. I found a bench in the park that has the most perfect view of the whole city and that I now think of as entirely mine. He has a mother. He has a mother who still cuts articles out of the newspaper for him. He has a mother who still cuts articles out of the newspaper for him and mails them even though he lives 10 minutes away. I have a list. I have a list of things I want to do before I turn 40. I have a list of things I want to do before I turn 40 and I am slightly behind schedule on most of them. She took a leap. She took a leap that everyone around her thought was completely reckless. She took a leap that everyone around her thought was completely reckless and landed somewhere better than any of them expected. I know a dentist. I know a dentist who is somehow the most entertaining person at any party. I know a dentist who is somehow the most entertaining person at any party despite having what most people consider a deeply boring job. He has a cabin. He has a cabin that has been in his family for 4 generations. He has a cabin that has been in his family for 4 generations and that nobody is ever allowed to sell under any circumstances. I have a friend. I have a friend who moved abroad and never once looked back. I have a friend who moved abroad and never once looked back even though she left basically everything behind. She made a connection. She made a connection at a conference that ended up changing her entire career path. She made a connection at a conference that ended up changing her entire career path in a direction she never would have predicted. I know a guy. I know a guy who can fix almost anything with whatever happens to be nearby. I know a guy who can fix almost anything with whatever happens to be nearby and treats every broken thing as a personal challenge. He has a routine. He has a routine that he built specifically to protect his mental health. He has a routine that he built specifically to protect his mental health and that he treats as completely non-negotiable. I visited a gallery. I visited a gallery that had only one painting on display. I visited a gallery that had only one painting on display and somehow that made it the most powerful exhibition I've ever been to. She has a journal. She has a journal that she has kept every day for the past 7 years. She has a journal that she has kept every day for the past 7 years and that she says has saved her more than once. I have a car. I have a car that has more miles on it than most planes. I have a car that has more miles on it than most planes but has never once left me stranded on the side of the road. He found a document. He found a document that rewrote everything the team thought they knew. He found a document that rewrote everything the team thought they knew and set the whole project back by 6 months. I know a woman. I know a woman who runs ultramarathons in her spare time. I know a woman who runs ultramarathons in her spare time and also holds down a full-time job and raises 2 kids. She has a cat. She has a cat who greets her at the door every single evening. She has a cat who greets her at the door every single evening and acts deeply offended if she is even 5 minutes late. I have a habit. I have a habit of reading the last page of a book before I start it. I have a habit of reading the last page of a book before I start it, and I refuse to apologize for it. He made a move. He made a move that nobody at the company saw coming. He made a move that nobody at the company saw coming and that completely reshuffled the power dynamic overnight. I know a man. I know a man who has read the same book every single year for 30 years. I know a man who has read the same book every single year for 30 years and says he finds something new in it every time. She has a laugh. She has a laugh that makes you want to say something funny just to hear it again. She has a laugh that makes you want to say something funny just to hear it again, even when you're not a particularly funny person. I found a route. I found a route that takes me past the most beautiful street in the whole city. I found a route that takes me past the most beautiful street in the whole city, and I now take it even when it's out of my way. He has a daughter. He has a daughter who corrects his grammar every time he speaks. He has a daughter who corrects his grammar every time he speaks and is completely right every single time, which makes it worse. I have a memory. I have a memory of a summer that felt like it would never end. I have a memory of a summer that felt like it would never end and that I still think about whenever the weather gets warm. She took a job. She took a job on the other side of the country with no real plan. She took a job on the other side of the country with no real plan and figured out the rest as she went. I know a couple. I know a couple who built their entire house with their own hands. I know a couple who built their entire house with their own hands over 2 years and still managed to stay together through it. He has a friend. He has a friend who shows up unannounced and somehow always at the right moment. He has a friend who shows up unannounced and somehow always at the right moment with food and absolutely no explanation. I have a word. I have a word that I always misspell no matter how many times I look it up. I have a word that I always misspell no matter how many times I look it up, and at this point I've just accepted it. She found a photograph. She found a photograph of her parents before she was born. She found a photograph of her parents before she was born and said it was like meeting 2 completely different people. I know a builder. I know a builder who takes on projects nobody else is willing to touch. I know a builder who takes on projects nobody else is willing to touch and somehow always delivers something remarkable. He has a dog. He has a dog who has separation anxiety so severe it became a local legend. He has a dog who has separation anxiety so severe it became a local legend among everyone in the apartment building. I have a question. I have a question that I've been sitting on for a very long time. I have a question that I've been sitting on for a very long time and am only now starting to find the courage to ask. She has a manager. She has a manager who takes all the credit and none of the blame. She has a manager who takes all the credit and none of the blame and has somehow been doing it for years without consequence. I visited a lighthouse. I visited a lighthouse that hadn't been in use for over 50 years. I visited a lighthouse that hadn't been in use for over 50 years but still had all its original equipment perfectly intact. He made a bet. He made a bet that he was 100% certain he would win. He made a bet that he was 100% certain he would win and lost in a way that still gets brought up at family dinners. I know a kid. I know a kid who started a small business at age 12. I know a kid who started a small business at age 12 and was turning a profit before most adults figure out what they want to do. She has a routine. She has a routine for Sunday mornings that she protects fiercely. She has a routine for Sunday mornings that she protects fiercely and that nobody in her life is allowed to interfere with. I have a laptop. I have a laptop that takes 3 full minutes to start up. I have a laptop that takes 3 full minutes to start up and that I keep meaning to replace but somehow never do. He found a letter. He found a letter addressed to someone who no longer lived at his address. He found a letter addressed to someone who no longer lived at his address and spent weeks trying to track down who it belonged to. I know a woman. I know a woman who left a perfectly good career to open a flower shop. I know a woman who left a perfectly good career to open a flower shop and says it was the first decision she ever made entirely for herself. She has a tradition. She has a tradition of cooking the same meal every year on New Year's Eve. She has a tradition of cooking the same meal every year on New Year's Eve that her mother taught her and that she will teach her own kids. I have a friend. I have a friend who has a gift for making strangers feel immediately comfortable. I have a friend who has a gift for making strangers feel immediately comfortable and has never once met someone he couldn't talk to. He has a theory. He has a theory about why mornings feel harder than they used to. He has a theory about why mornings feel harder than they used to and has more data to back it up than anyone asked for. I found a road. I found a road that winds through the hills for about 40 miles. I found a road that winds through the hills for about 40 miles and that I now drive whenever I need to clear my head. She made a friend. She made a friend on the first day of a job she almost didn't take. She made a friend on the first day of a job she almost didn't take and who is now the closest person in her life. I know a man. I know a man who has not eaten at a restaurant in over 10 years. I know a man who has not eaten at a restaurant in over 10 years because he genuinely believes he cooks better than anywhere he's been. He has a suitcase. He has a suitcase that he has carried to every continent except one. He has a suitcase that he has carried to every continent except one and says he is saving it for when the time is right. I have a spot. I have a spot in the park where I go whenever I need to think. I have a spot in the park where I go whenever I need to think and that I have never once told another person about. She has a coworker. She has a coworker who remembers every birthday in the entire office. She has a coworker who remembers every birthday in the entire office and always has a card ready without anyone asking. I know a man. I know a man who wakes up at 4 every morning without an alarm. I know a man who wakes up at 4 every morning without an alarm and has done so for the past 20 years without explanation. He made a film. He made a film that took 11 years to finish. He made a film that took 11 years to finish and won an award the very first night it was screened. I have a knife. I have a knife that my grandfather gave me when I turned 18. I have a knife that my grandfather gave me when I turned 18 and that I have never once used but could never give away. She found a cafe. She found a cafe that stays open until 3 in the morning. She found a cafe that stays open until 3 in the morning and has become her go-to place whenever she can't sleep. I know a couple. I know a couple who disagree on almost everything but make it work somehow. I know a couple who disagree on almost everything but make it work somehow and have been doing so happily for over 30 years. He has a journal. He has a journal that he is filled with ideas he will probably never act on. He has a journal that he is filled with ideas he will probably never act on but that he can't bring himself to stop adding to. I have a teacher. I have a teacher who never raises her voice no matter what is happening. I have a teacher who never raises her voice no matter what is happening and somehow commands more respect than anyone who does. She took a detour. She took a detour that ended up being the best part of the whole trip. She took a detour that ended up being the best part of the whole trip and that she would have completely missed if she had stayed on schedule. I know a writer. I know a writer who gets up at 5 every morning to work before the world wakes up. I know a writer who gets up at 5 every morning to work before the world wakes up and says those 2 hours are worth more than the rest of the day combined. He has a rule. He has a rule about never going to bed angry. He has a rule about never going to bed angry that he has managed to keep for the entire duration of his marriage. I visited a town. I visited a town where everyone seemed to know each other. I visited a town where everyone seemed to know each other and where a stranger walking in immediately became a topic of conversation. She has a memory. She has a memory of her first day in a new country that she describes in perfect detail. She has a memory of her first day in a new country that she describes in perfect detail even though it happened over 30 years ago. I have a mug. I have a mug that I refuse to drink coffee out of anything else. I have a mug that I refuse to drink coffee out of anything else and that has survived 3 moves and 1 very close call. He found a path. He found a path that led to a part of the forest he had never seen before. He found a path that led to a part of the forest he had never seen before despite having lived near it for most of his life. I know a nurse. I know a nurse who somehow makes every patient feel like the only one. I know a nurse who somehow makes every patient feel like the only one in the building no matter how busy the ward is. She has a project. She has a project that started as a small idea and has taken over her entire life. She has a project that started as a small idea and has taken over her entire life in the most wonderful and exhausting way possible. I have a habit. I have a habit of checking the door twice before I go to sleep. I have a habit of checking the door twice before I go to sleep that started years ago and that I cannot seem to talk myself out of. He made a speech. He made a speech that nobody in the room was expecting. He made a speech that nobody in the room was expecting and that left people talking about it for weeks after the event. I know a family. I know a family that takes a month-long road trip every single summer. I know a family that takes a month-long road trip every single summer with no fixed itinerary and no real plan beyond the first night. She has a technique. She has a technique for falling asleep in under 5 minutes. She has a technique for falling asleep in under 5 minutes that she learned from a book and that has never once failed her. I found a record. I found a record at a flea market that I had been searching for years. I found a record at a flea market that I had been searching for years and paid almost nothing for, which made it even better. He has a mentor. He has a mentor who never tells him what to do but always asks the right question. He has a mentor who never tells him what to do but always asks the right question at exactly the moment he needs it most. I have a routine. I have a routine that I developed during one of the hardest periods of my life. I have a routine that I developed during one of the hardest periods of my life and that I now credit with getting me through it. She made a call. She made a call to an old friend she hadn't spoken to in years. She made a call to an old friend she hadn't spoken to in years and they talked for 4 hours like no time had passed at all. I know a man. I know a man who has never once complained about anything in my presence. I know a man who has never once complained about anything in my presence and I genuinely cannot decide if that is admirable or suspicious. He has a collection. He has a collection of postcards from places he has never been. He has a collection of postcards from places he has never been sent by friends over the years and covering every wall of his hallway. I have a friend. I have a friend who makes the best decision under pressure of anyone I've ever met. I have a friend who makes the best decision under pressure of anyone I've ever met and somehow gets calmer the worse the situation gets. She took a walk. She took a walk every evening for a year after things fell apart. She took a walk every evening for a year after things fell apart and says it was the thing that put her back together. I know a doctor. I know a doctor who still writes personal notes to every patient he sees. I know a doctor who still writes personal notes to every patient he sees and has done so for the entire 30 years of his career. He found a house. He found a house that had been empty for over 20 years. He found a house that had been empty for over 20 years and spent the next 3 restoring it entirely on his own. I have a sister. I have a sister who has the most infuriating habit of always being right. I have a sister who has the most infuriating habit of always being right and the equally infuriating grace of never saying "I told you so." She has a goal. She has a goal that she has written on a piece of paper above her desk. She has a goal that she has written on a piece of paper above her desk and that she reads out loud every single morning. I know a couple. I know a couple who met in line at a coffee shop and got married 6 months later. I know a couple who met in line at a coffee shop and got married 6 months later and are somehow still going strong 15 years on. He has a theory. He has a theory about why people are so much nicer in small towns. He has a theory about why people are so much nicer in small towns that he has been developing for years and will share with anyone who asks. I visited a library. I visited a library that had a reading room unlike anything I had ever seen. I visited a library that had a reading room unlike anything I had ever seen, with ceilings so high you had to tilt your head all the way back. She has a dog. She has a dog who has attended more therapy sessions than most people. She has a dog who has attended more therapy sessions than most people as an emotional support animal and apparently does an excellent job. I have a plan. I have a plan for what I want the next 5 years to look like. I have a plan for what I want the next 5 years to look like that I revisit every January and adjust based on whatever the previous year taught me. He found a mentor. He found a mentor in the most unexpected place at the most unexpected time. He found a mentor in the most unexpected place at the most unexpected time and credits that single encounter with changing his entire trajectory. I know a woman. I know a woman who has been writing in the same notebook style for 40 years. I know a woman who has been writing in the same notebook style for 40 years and has shelves of completed ones lining her entire study. She has a brother. She has a brother who can make anyone feel better within about 30 seconds. She has a brother who can make anyone feel better within about 30 seconds and has never once had to try very hard to do it. I have a word. I have a word that I use far too often and cannot seem to drop. I have a word that I use far too often and cannot seem to drop no matter how many times people point it out to me. He made a journey. He made a journey that took him 3 months and changed him completely. He made a journey that took him 3 months and changed him completely in ways that he is still trying to put into words years later. I know a teacher. I know a teacher who turned down a much higher paying job to stay with his students. I know a teacher who turned down a much higher paying job to stay with his students and has never once given the impression that he regrets it. She has a habit. She has a habit of writing down 3 things she is grateful for before bed. She has a habit of writing down 3 things she is grateful for before bed that she started during a difficult year and has kept up ever since. I found a corner. I found a corner in a bookshop that felt like it was built specifically for me. I found a corner in a bookshop that felt like it was built specifically for me and where I have since spent more money than I would like to admit. He has a son. He has a son who is turning into someone he genuinely admires. He has a son who is turning into someone he genuinely admires and who surprises him in the best possible way on a regular basis. I have a resolution. I have a resolution that for once I actually intend to keep. I have a resolution that for once I actually intend to keep because this time I made it small enough to be real and specific enough to track. She has a coworker. She has a coworker who somehow always knows when you need a coffee. She has a coworker who somehow always knows when you need a coffee and appears with one before you even realize it yourself. I have a grandfather. I have a grandfather who still writes letters by hand to everyone he loves. I have a grandfather who still writes letters by hand to everyone he loves and whose handwriting has never once gotten worse with age. He found a hobby. He found a hobby that started as a way to kill time and became a second career. He found a hobby that started as a way to kill time and became a second career that now earns him more than his actual job. I know a woman. I know a woman who has never once arrived anywhere without something homemade to share. I know a woman who has never once arrived anywhere without something homemade to share and whose cooking has never failed to impress a single person. She has a memory. She has a memory of the exact moment she knew she wanted to be a doctor. She has a memory of the exact moment she knew she wanted to be a doctor that she describes with such clarity it gives you chills every time. I have a coat. I have a coat that has been through more winters than I can count. I have a coat that has been through more winters than I can count and that I will keep wearing until it physically falls apart. He made a friend. He made a friend at the lowest point of his life who has never left his side since. He made a friend at the lowest point of his life who has never left his side since and who he says arrived at exactly the right moment. I know a pilot. I know a pilot who reads a book on every single flight she operates. I know a pilot who reads a book on every single flight she operates during the cruise phase and has finished over 200 this way. She has a neighbor. She has a neighbor who has lived in the same apartment since the building was new. She has a neighbor who has lived in the same apartment since the building was new and remembers every single person who has ever moved in or out. I found a journal. I found a journal that I had completely forgotten I ever kept. I found a journal that I had completely forgotten I ever kept and spent an entire evening reading it cover to cover in total disbelief. He has a skill. He has a skill for reading a room the moment he walks into it. He has a skill for reading a room the moment he walks into it and adjusting how he presents himself so naturally that most people never notice. I have a tradition. I have a tradition of cooking a big meal for anyone who needs a home for the holidays. I have a tradition of cooking a big meal for anyone who needs a home for the holidays that started with 2 people and now regularly draws 15. She took a course. She took a course that she almost talked herself out of signing up for 3 separate times. She took a course that she almost talked herself out of signing up for 3 separate times and that ended up being one of the best things she ever did. I know a man. I know a man who has a handshake that makes you feel immediately trusted. I know a man who has a handshake that makes you feel immediately trusted and a way of listening that makes you feel immediately understood. He has a routine. He has a routine of calling his mother every Sunday without exception. He has a routine of calling his mother every Sunday without exception and says it is the one appointment he has never once considered canceling. I visited a market. I visited a market that stretched for what felt like miles in every direction. I visited a market that stretched for what felt like miles in every direction and where you could find absolutely anything if you were willing to look long enough. She has a talent. She has a talent for seeing the best in people even when they make it difficult. She has a talent for seeing the best in people even when they make it very difficult and for making them feel seen in a way that tends to change them. I have a drawer. I have a drawer full of things I keep meaning to sort through. I have a drawer full of things I keep meaning to sort through that has been in exactly the same state of chaos for at least 4 years. He found a road. He found a road that nobody in town seemed to know existed. He found a road that nobody in town seemed to know existed and that led to a view so good he sat there for 2 hours without moving. I know a family. I know a family that has game night every single Friday without fail. I know a family that has game night every single Friday without fail and takes it just seriously enough to be genuinely competitive. She made a plan. She made a plan that seemed overly ambitious to everyone except her. She made a plan that seemed overly ambitious to everyone except her and that she executed so precisely it silenced every single doubter. I have a brother. I have a brother who never asks for help but always shows up for everyone else. I have a brother who never asks for help but always shows up for everyone else and somehow makes it look completely effortless. He has a philosophy. He has a philosophy about money that most people think is extreme. He has a philosophy about money that most people think is extreme, but that has allowed him to retire 20 years earlier than anyone he grew up with. I know a woman. I know a woman who learned to paint at the age of 70. I know a woman who learned to paint at the age of 70 and within 2 years was selling work at a gallery downtown. She found a book. She found a book that described her life so accurately it frightened her. She found a book that described her life so accurately it frightened her and that she has since bought for more people than she can remember. I have a friend. I have a friend who gives advice only when you actually ask for it. I have a friend who gives advice only when you actually ask for it, which makes him one of the rarest and most valuable people I know. He took a year. He took a year off from everything and came back a completely different person. He took a year off from everything and came back a completely different person in all the ways that actually matter. I know a barber. I know a barber who has been cutting hair in the same chair for 35 years. I know a barber who has been cutting hair in the same chair for 35 years and knows more about the neighborhood than anyone alive. She has a way. She has a way of remembering small details about people that makes them feel remarkable. She has a way of remembering small details about people that makes them feel remarkable and that keeps everyone she has ever met coming back into her orbit. I have a routine. I have a routine that has nothing to do with productivity and everything to do with joy. I have a routine that has nothing to do with productivity and everything to do with joy, and that I defend against anyone who tries to optimize it. He found a letter. He found a letter that his father had written to him but never sent. He found a letter that his father had written to him but never sent, and that answered questions he had been carrying around for most of his adult life. I know a runner. I know a runner who started at 50 and has never stopped since. I know a runner who started at 50 and has never stopped since, and who now regularly finishes ahead of people half her age. She has a voice. She has a voice that is completely calm in situations that would rattle anyone else. She has a voice that is completely calm in situations that would rattle anyone else, and that has talked more than one person down from the edge. I have a belief. I have a belief that I have held since I was very young and that nothing has managed to shake. I have a belief that I have held since I was very young and that nothing has managed to shake, no matter what life has thrown at me in the meantime. He made a discovery. He made a discovery about himself that took 40 years to arrive at. He made a discovery about himself that took 40 years to arrive at, and that he wishes someone had helped him find much sooner. I know a couple. I know a couple who have done everything everyone told them not to do. I know a couple who have done everything everyone told them not to do and whose life looks from the outside like proof that the advice was wrong. She has a job. She has a job that most people have never heard of and cannot easily explain. She has a job that most people have never heard of and cannot easily explain, but that she finds more fulfilling than any conventional career she can imagine. I visited a city. I visited a city that I had low expectations for and ended up completely falling for. I visited a city that I had low expectations for and ended up completely falling for in a way that has had me planning to go back ever since. He has a habit. He has a habit of writing down the best thing that happened each day. He has a habit of writing down the best thing that happened each day, no matter how small, and says it has quietly changed the way he experiences his life. I know a man. I know a man who has given away more than most people will ever earn. I know a man who has given away more than most people will ever earn and who seems to find this the most natural thing in the world. She has a garden. She has a garden that she started with seeds her mother gave her the year before she passed. She has a garden that she started with seeds her mother gave her the year before she passed, and that she tends with a care that goes well beyond horticulture. I have a book. I have a book that I read at least one page of every single night. I have a book that I read at least one page of every single night, no matter how late it is or how tired I feel when I finally get into bed. He found a shortcut. He found a shortcut through a part of the city that most people drive straight past. He found a shortcut through a part of the city that most people drive straight past, and that has some of the most interesting architecture he has ever seen. I know a woman. I know a woman who remembers the name of every person she has ever met. I know a woman who remembers the name of every person she has ever met and uses it immediately, which has the effect of making everyone feel instantly significant. She has a principle. She has a principle about never speaking badly of someone who is not in the room. She has a principle about never speaking badly of someone who is not in the room that she holds to so consistently that it has become the thing people most associate with her. I have a memory. I have a memory of the last conversation I had with someone I lost too soon. I have a memory of the last conversation I had with someone I lost too soon that I replay sometimes and am grateful every time that it was a good one. He has a dog. He has a dog who has never once in 6 years failed to make him laugh at least once a day. He has a dog who has never once in 6 years failed to make him laugh at least once a day and who he credits with keeping him sane through some very hard stretches. I know a teacher. I know a teacher who changed the direction of my entire life with a single comment. I know a teacher who changed the direction of my entire life with a single comment that she probably does not even remember making. She made a promise. She made a promise to herself on a very bad night that she has kept every day since. She made a promise to herself on a very bad night that she has kept every day since, and that has slowly become the foundation everything else is built on. I have a friend. I have a friend who has the rare gift of making you feel like the most interesting person in the room. I have a friend who has the rare gift of making you feel like the most interesting person in the room and who somehow manages to do it with everyone he meets. He found a place. He found a place that felt like home the very first time he walked in. He found a place that felt like home the very first time he walked in, even though he had never been there before in his life. I know a man. I know a man who has not missed a sunrise in over 3 years. I know a man who has not missed a sunrise in over 3 years and says it is the single habit that has changed everything else. She has a sister. She has a sister who is her complete opposite in every imaginable way. She has a sister who is her complete opposite in every imaginable way and also the person she would call first in any crisis without hesitation. I have a chair. I have a chair that I do all my best thinking in. I have a chair that I do all my best thinking in and that I would rescue first in a fire ahead of almost everything else I own. He made a trip. He made a trip that he had been putting off for over a decade. He made a trip that he had been putting off for over a decade and that lived up to every version of it he had built up in his head. I know a woman. I know a woman who has never once sent a text message without reading it twice first. I know a woman who has never once sent a text message without reading it twice first and whose communication is consequently the clearest of anyone I know. She has a method. She has a method for making decisions that she has been using since her 20s. She has a method for making decisions that she has been using since her 20s and that has yet to steer her seriously wrong. I found a village. I found a village on a map that turned out to be the most beautiful place I have ever been. I found a village on a map that turned out to be the most beautiful place I have ever been and that had no tourists whatsoever when I arrived. He has a daughter. He has a daughter who reminds him every day of what actually matters. He has a daughter who reminds him every day of what actually matters just by being exactly who she is without trying at all. I have a rule. I have a rule about not checking my phone for the first hour of the day. I have a rule about not checking my phone for the first hour of the day that took 3 weeks to build and that has quietly changed the entire tone of my mornings. She found a mentor. She found a mentor who never once made her feel small for not knowing something. She found a mentor who never once made her feel small for not knowing something and who she credits with giving her the confidence to take up space in rooms she had no business being in. I know a couple. I know a couple who have been through more than most people could survive. I know a couple who have been through more than most people could survive and who have come out the other side with a kind of quiet strength that is genuinely humbling. He has a notebook. He has a notebook that he carries everywhere without exception. He has a notebook that he carries everywhere without exception and that contains ideas ranging from genuinely brilliant to completely unhinged. I have a neighbor. I have a neighbor who has lived next door for 20 years and whose name I still am not entirely sure of. I have a neighbor who has lived next door for 20 years and whose name I still am not entirely sure of, which at this point feels too late to fix. She made a choice. She made a choice at 22 that took 20 years to fully understand. She made a choice at 22 that took 20 years to fully understand and that she now considers the most important thing she ever did for herself. I know a man. I know a man who attributes everything good in his life to reading. I know a man who attributes everything good in his life to reading and who has the kind of mind that makes you want to immediately believe him. He has a way. He has a way of making hard work look completely effortless. He has a way of making hard work look completely effortless that has fooled more than a few people into underestimating just how much he actually puts in. I found a path. I found a path that runs behind the houses on my street that nobody seems to use. I found a path that runs behind the houses on my street that nobody seems to use, and that has become my favorite place to go when I need 5 minutes of quiet. She has a friend. She has a friend who has talked her out of every bad decision she has ever almost made. She has a friend who has talked her out of every bad decision she has ever almost made and who she considers the most valuable person in her entire life. I have a lamp. I have a lamp that I bought at a market 10 years ago for almost nothing. I have a lamp that I bought at a market 10 years ago for almost nothing, and that has sat in the same corner of every apartment I have lived in since. He took a chance. He took a chance on a business idea that everyone around him said was too niche. He took a chance on a business idea that everyone around him said was too niche and proved within 18 months that they were all spectacularly wrong. I know a librarian. I know a librarian who can find the right book for any person in under 2 minutes. I know a librarian who can find the right book for any person in under 2 minutes just by asking 3 questions and listening very carefully to the answers. She has a habit. She has a habit of leaving early so she is never rushed. She has a habit of leaving early so she is never rushed that she developed after one catastrophic experience of being very late to something that really mattered. I have a friend. I have a friend who has never once failed to show up when it counted. I have a friend who has never once failed to show up when it counted and who does it so quietly and consistently that it took me years to fully appreciate what that means. He found a record. He found a record of his grandmother singing that nobody in the family knew existed. He found a record of his grandmother singing that nobody in the family knew existed, and that reduced every single person at the next reunion to tears. I know a doctor. I know a doctor who sits with every patient until every question has been answered. I know a doctor who sits with every patient until every question has been answered and who has somehow maintained this practice through 30 years of a very demanding career. She has a project. She has a project that she works on for exactly 1 hour every morning before the rest of life begins. She has a project that she works on for exactly 1 hour every morning before the rest of life begins, and that is slowly becoming the thing she is most proud of. I have a theory. I have a theory about why the best conversations always happen in the car. I have a theory about why the best conversations always happen in the car that involves eye contact and the particular kind of honesty that comes from both people looking straight ahead. He has a collection. He has a collection of maps from places he visited before smartphones existed. He has a collection of maps from places he visited before smartphones existed, all covered in handwritten notes about where he ate and what he saw and who he met. I know a woman. I know a woman who turned the hardest year of her life into the most productive. I know a woman who turned the hardest year of her life into the most productive and who says that having nothing left to lose was the most clarifying feeling she has ever experienced. She has a son. She has a son who still calls her every day even though he is 34 years old. She has a son who still calls her every day even though he is 34 years old and who she describes as the best thing she ever had a hand in. I found a bench. I found a bench outside a church that gets the afternoon light perfectly. I found a bench outside a church that gets the afternoon light perfectly and where I have read more good books than anywhere else in the city. He made a comeback. He made a comeback that nobody who knew him at his lowest point could have predicted. He made a comeback that nobody who knew him at his lowest point could have predicted and that he talks about now with a kind of measured gratitude that makes you believe every word. I know a man. I know a man who has coached youth football for over 25 years without pay. I know a man who has coached youth football for over 25 years without pay and who has had more influence on more lives than he will ever fully know. She has a ritual. She has a ritual of walking the same route every morning before anyone else is awake. She has a ritual of walking the same route every morning before anyone else is awake and says it is the only part of the day that belongs entirely to her. I have a feeling. I have a feeling that I am exactly where I am supposed to be. I have a feeling that I am exactly where I am supposed to be, even though I could not have told you 2 years ago that this is where I would end up. He found a teacher. He found a teacher who expected more from him than he expected from himself. He found a teacher who expected more from him than he expected from himself and who turned out to be right about what he was capable of in a way that changed the course of everything. I know a couple. I know a couple who chose each other again after a long time apart. I know a couple who chose each other again after a long time apart and who describe the second chapter as so much better than the first that it almost makes the gap feel intentional. She has a way. She has a way of finding the exact right words for the exact right moment. She has a way of finding the exact right words for the exact right moment that has gotten her through countless situations where most people would have simply gone quiet. I have a belief. I have a belief that most people are doing the very best they can. I have a belief that most people are doing the very best they can with what they have, and that remembering this makes almost every difficult interaction easier to navigate. He has a friend. He has a friend who has known him longer than anyone else still in his life. He has a friend who has known him longer than anyone else still in his life and who holds a version of him that he is grateful someone still remembers. I know a woman. I know a woman who built something from nothing twice after losing everything. I know a woman who built something from nothing twice after losing everything and who approaches the idea of starting over with a calm that most people only find after decades. She has a dog. She has a dog who has been her most constant companion through every chapter. She has a dog who has been her most constant companion through every chapter and who she talks to with a frankness she reserves for very few people. I found a letter. I found a letter that changed how I understood my own family completely. I found a letter that changed how I understood my own family completely and that I have read so many times the paper has started to wear along the folds. He made a decision. He made a decision to stop waiting for the right moment and start anyway. He made a decision to stop waiting for the right moment and start anyway that turned out to be the only decision that actually mattered in the end. I know a man. I know a man who says the best investment he ever made was in people. I know a man who says the best investment he ever made was in people and whose life is so full of loyalty and warmth that it is very hard to argue with him. She has a voice. She has a voice that you remember long after the conversation has ended. She has a voice that you remember long after the conversation has ended, not because of how it sounds but because of the weight of what it tends to say. I have a window. I have a window that I sit beside every morning with my coffee. I have a window that I sit beside every morning with my coffee, and that has given me a front row seat to more of ordinary life than I ever expected to find so moving. I have a life. I have a life that looks nothing like what I planned. I have a life that looks nothing like what I planned and that I would not trade for any version of what I thought I wanted back then. She has a story. She has a story that does not have a neat ending yet. She has a story that does not have a neat ending yet, but that she is still in the middle of writing, and that is exactly where the most interesting part tends to be. He has a garden. He has a garden that he tends to every evening after work. He has a garden that he tends to every evening after work, and that has become the place where he does his best thinking. I know a woman. I know a woman who has volunteered every weekend for the past 15 years. I know a woman who has volunteered every weekend for the past 15 years and who says it is the thing that keeps her most grounded. She has a phrase. She has a phrase that she uses whenever things get overwhelming. She has a phrase that she uses whenever things get overwhelming, and that has gotten her through more difficult moments than she can count. I found a shop. I found a shop that sells things you did not know still existed. I found a shop that sells things you did not know still existed, and that is run by a man who knows the history of every single item. He made a call. He made a call that he had been putting off for the better part of a year. He made a call that he had been putting off for the better part of a year, and that turned out to be one of the easiest conversations he had ever had. I have a morning routine that I built around the 1 hour before anyone else wakes up. I have a morning routine that I built around the 1 hour before anyone else wakes up, and that has become the most important part of my entire day. She found a song. She found a song that described exactly how she had been feeling for months. She found a song that described exactly how she had been feeling for months, and that she listened to on repeat until she finally felt ready to talk about it. I know a man. I know a man who spent 10 years building something that failed and started again the next day. I know a man who spent 10 years building something that failed and started again the next day with the same level of commitment that most people cannot sustain for 10 minutes. He has a sister. He has a sister who has always believed in him more than he has believed in himself. He has a sister who has always believed in him more than he has believed in himself, and who he credits quietly with every good thing he has ever managed to do. I visited a place. I visited a place that reminded me of everything I had been taking for granted. I visited a place that reminded me of everything I had been taking for granted and sent me home with a gratitude that lasted longer than any trip I have ever taken. She has a rule. She has a rule about protecting her energy as carefully as she protects her time. She has a rule about protecting her energy as carefully as she protects her time, and that has made her both harder to access and far more present when she is actually there. I have a moment. I have a moment from last year that I keep coming back to. I have a moment from last year that I keep coming back to because it was the first time in a long time that everything felt exactly right. He found a book. He found a book that put language to something he had felt his whole life but never been able to name. He found a book that put language to something he had felt his whole life but never been able to name, and that he has since pressed into the hands of everyone he cares about. I know a family. I know a family that has more warmth in their home than anywhere I have ever been. I know a family that has more warmth in their home than anywhere I have ever been, and that makes every single person who walks through their door feel like they were expected. She has a memory. She has a memory of the exact moment her life divided into before and after. She has a memory of the exact moment her life divided into before and after, and she speaks about both halves with equal measures of honesty and grace. I have a habit. I have a habit of pausing before I respond when something matters. I have a habit of pausing before I respond when something matters that I learned the hard way after one too many moments of saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. He has a belief. He has a belief that showing up consistently is worth more than being brilliant occasionally. He has a belief that showing up consistently is worth more than being brilliant occasionally, and his entire career is a fairly persuasive argument in favor of it. I know a woman. I know a woman who chose a smaller life and has never once seemed smaller for it. I know a woman who chose a smaller life and has never once seemed smaller for it, but rather more fully herself than anyone I have ever met. She found a routine. She found a routine that finally made her feel like her days belonged to her. She found a routine that finally made her feel like her days belonged to her and not to everyone and everything that had been pulling at her attention for years. I have a friend. I have a friend who makes ordinary evenings feel like something worth remembering. I have a friend who makes ordinary evenings feel like something worth remembering, and who I am quietly grateful for every single time we say goodbye. He made a change. He made a change that was so small nobody noticed, but that shifted everything. He made a change that was so small nobody noticed, but that shifted everything quietly and permanently in a direction that has made all the difference. I know a man. I know a man who has more patience than anyone I have ever encountered. I know a man who has more patience than anyone I have ever encountered, and who treats it not as a personality trait but as a daily practice. She has a daughter. She has a daughter who sees the world in a way that constantly surprises her. She has a daughter who sees the world in a way that constantly surprises her, and who has taught her more about how to pay attention than any book ever has. I found a moment. I found a moment of complete stillness in the middle of a very loud year. I found a moment of complete stillness in the middle of a very loud year and held onto it with everything I had because I knew exactly how rare it was. He has a home. He has a home that he has filled slowly and deliberately with only things he loves. He has a home that he has filled slowly and deliberately with only things he loves, and that feels as a result like a place that could only ever belong to him. I know a couple. I know a couple who still leave notes for each other after 30 years. I know a couple who still leave notes for each other after 30 years and who treat the small gestures with the same seriousness that most people reserve only for the big ones. She has a life. She has a life that she designed entirely from scratch after the old one stopped fitting. She has a life that she designed entirely from scratch after the old one stopped fitting, and that looks from the outside like exactly what it is, which is the result of a great deal of courage. I have a word. I have a word for the feeling of being exactly where you belong. I have a word for the feeling of being exactly where you belong that I came across in a book years ago and that I have been quietly collecting moments that match it ever since. He found a reason. He found a reason to keep going at a point when most people would have stopped. He found a reason to keep going at a point when most people would have stopped and built everything that came after around, never losing sight of it again. I know a woman. I know a woman whose kindness has left a mark on every single person she has ever met. I know a woman whose kindness has left a mark on every single person she has ever met and who will never fully know the size of the ripple she has created just by being who she is. I have a life. I have a life that is still very much in progress. I have a life that is still very much in progress and that I am learning to love, not in spite of that fact but because of it.